Hi, in this demo we want to talk about the game controller and interfacing with it. And I'll show you some code that is useful to set up game controller and detect a wireless game controller, and also to interact with the game controller once we have it set up. So this is a very simple user interface. All I've got here is a button that is normally hidden that is labeled Find Wireless Controller. The hidden attribute is here in the properties for the button. Now, if a wireless or other view controller is connected while your app is not running, then the device will pair with that view controller automatically. But if your app is running and you try to connect a wireless view controller, you need to actually pair that yourself. Now, for the other types of view controllers, for the non-wireless view controllers, or the game controllers that you place the device into, I said view controller, I meant game controller, those will automatically detect, and you don't have to do anything. So the only situation where you have to actually pair with a wireless controller is if your app is running. So we've got a button here to do that. And we would probably also have other interface buttons that would be used to control your game while if a game controller was not attached. Remember that you cannot require a game controller. Apple will reject your app. So here we go. In our view controller, we have some properties. I have an instance of GC Controller, which is a game controller, and I've just called that controller. Now, notice in the frameworks that I have imported the game controller framework, and then I've also imported game controller whack gamecontroller.h. And we would import this any place that we needed to get to the controller. We've also got a property for the button, the Find Wireless button, so we can turn it on and off. We can hide it and unhide it when we need to. I've also got a property here, Boolean force exit, and we'll talk about this one in just a moment. And then I've got an action for when that button is tapped called Find Wireless Controller. So I've got some setup going on in my ViewDidLoad method. So let me get rid of this sidebar. The first thing we need to do, remember in an app, is if the app is running, we need to detect whether any controllers are currently connected with the device. We can get the count of the array of controllers, and there should be only one, but we still get the count using a class method of GC Controller called controllers. So if that count is equal to 0, we don't have any controllers currently connected. So if we want to attempt to connect a device, we could enable or unhide the wireless button, and we've done that here. Otherwise, we have a controller connected, and then we can just assign self.controller. This is going to be the object at index 0. We could also do something if there were a wireless controller and a fixed controller or an embedded controller, both attached, then we could determine which one was which, and then attach the one that we wanted to. So now the next thing we have to do is if we want to alert the app when the controller is connected and or disconnected, we need to register for a couple of notifications. So I have some more here. A wireless controller must be detected as above. Form-fitting controllers are automatically detected. Outside the app, this process happens in the background, but you may want to hide or show user interface elements if either connection or disconnection occurs while the app is running, and this is how you do that. You register for a pair of notifications called GC Controller Did Connect Notification and GC Controller Did Disconnect Notification, and that's the pair of notifications that you register for. We add an observer with the selector that is in our class here for each of these notifications. And in the, let's say in the controller connected method here, This is where you would handle changes in your app interface due to the game controller being connected. So during the app running. So you might want to show or actually hide any user interface controls that are for the app not being controlled by a controller. You would want to do that here. In the controller disconnected, you would want to show those controls and perhaps do other things as well. So these are selectors that will respond to that pair of notifications. The next thing that we must do is deal with the state of the controller when the pause button is pressed. All controllers have a pause button. So we need to deal with that. So I've got a block variable here. It's a Boolean called canExit equal no. In this case, I'm not going to pause. I'm just going to exit out of the run loop. So let's just say we have this Boolean, and notice that self.controller now has a property called controller paused handler. And this is going to be a block, and it must have this signature. Returning void, it passes in a game controller. So it's of type game controller. It passes in that game controller upon which the pause button was pressed. And then we just assign that canExit equal to true, and then we assign the property forceExit to whatever canExit came out of that block as. And then we go ahead and enter a game loop. In this demo, in this code, I'm just doing the easiest case where we have a loop that's processing controller input, and that's how we handle this. So here's our loop. We need to get the profile of the controller. And remember, the profile of the controller is whether or not it has extended gamepad controls or just regular gamepad controls. If it has extended gamepad controls, it will have regular gamepad controls. So we go for that extended profile. We've set that up as profile. Now our loop begins, and there's no way out of this loop unless self-forceExit is true. If self-forceExit is true, then we break out of the loop. So we're just using the pause button here to break out of our run loop. Otherwise, this loop is going to continue to run forever. And the way we get controller input inside of a run loop is we check the profile. Now, here I've demonstrated profile.buttonA.isPressed. There are a plethora of buttons that we can check for in a controller. And I've listed out the extended profile buttons here in this comment. You can look at this. You can also get these from the tooltip, from profile dot whatever. Anyway, is pressed returns a Boolean, yes or no. So if it's pressed, then we want to do something. And we would check the state of all of these buttons. Now notice we could also do if button A and is pressed and button B is pressed, and check the state of two buttons at one time. So that's really it. As you can see, it's a very simple process. The most difficult thing about game controllers is if they are wireless, getting them detected and getting them attached as the game controller property within your application. And that's really not that difficult at all. Thank you very much.